Story 1. I am rotting in my apartment. Forgive me. I'm so tired. My skin is crawling all over. As I lay here, laptop on my chest, I can't find the energy to do anything but write. So, write I will. I signed the lease in late May after acquiring my new job. It was an austere brick building with a dingy tile-floored lobby lit by yellow bulbs that maintenance never seemed to replace. A single palm plant sat beside an ancient elevator system which screeched like 100 nails on chalkboards each time it opened. A perpetual puddle decorated the corner by the double glass doors. From pipe leakage or rain, I did not know. Rent was cheap. It was perfect. Move-in only took half a day. I don't own much. The mattress was the most arduous task. A heavy rain began just as I was sliding it out of the van. I hadn't thought to bring a plastic cover. I was considering the potential damage of dragging fabric across wet asphalt when a man cleared his throat behind me. "Looks like you could use some help." I turned to see an incredibly tall and broad man. He was dressed in a stretched white tank top and paint-stained cargo shorts, maybe late 40s. Older than me, I guessed anyhow, based on his thin graying hair, which was aggressively slicked back with some kind of product. He had shiny black eyes and a wiry mustache styled into mutton chops, giving him the appearance of a retired pro wrestler. His teeth were very white. The mustache bobbed almost cartoonishly as he spoke. "The name's Rick. Doorman, security, mailman, everything man. Whatever you need, I'm your guy." This is how I came to know my jailer. "Dan," I said by way of introduction, "help would be nice." Together we hauled the mattress into the elevator, sandwiching it between us. I always found it quaint that hotels and old apartments kindly omit floor 13 when labeling their halls. The thing is, they can't do a thing to change the architecture itself. Counting from the ground up, I would still be making my home on the veritable 13th floor. I pressed the button for floor 14. 14? Rick gasped. He peered around the mattress to stare at me, his voice low. "You know what they say about floor 14 tenants, don't you?" "No." I rocked onto my back heel, putting some space between us. "What do they say?" Rick barked a laugh. "Absolutely nothing." "You thought you were special." I laughed along because that's what you do when someone's trying to break the ice. I didn't find it very funny. Once we'd gotten the mattress back out of the elevator, I thanked him again, and he left me to it. I approached my room alone. The brown tile hallway had a smell to it, sweet and heady. One of my neighbors had an affinity for incense or fragrant cooking, I presumed. It wasn't unpleasant, but it was always there, I would soon discover. The smell never left. I unlocked the door. Inside, the scent was less overpowering. After leaning the mattress against the wall, I took a moment to just sit on the floor of the common room between overturned furniture and stacks of cardboard boxes. I was strangely exhausted. For whatever reason, I stretched out flat on that cool, uncarpeted floor, staring at the ceiling. There was no light fixture. I hadn't noticed that detail in the virtual photo tour. They never tell you everything. I thought about my mother scolding me from the couch when I told her I was leaving for the city. "It's not fair, Daniel," she'd said. "How can I take care of you when you're so far away?" Really, she was the one who needed care more than I did. If anything, I'd felt guilty leaving her behind several states away. But one day I'd taken a walk around our small town, under an overcast sky, looking at those same few strips of concrete and dead grass and empty shop fronts, realized that it was slowly withering my soul. I had to get out. After unpacking, I was unbelievably tired. As soon as I hit the pillow that evening, I was out like a light. My dreams were strange, full of syringes and bright lights and masked strangers with glassy eyes. In the middle of the night, I was hit with a wave of nausea. My head throbbed. My chest felt as if it were being compressed in a vice. I stumbled to the bathroom and knelt, coughing and retching over the bowl. Something in my throat dislodged itself and slid out of me, smooth and slippery and round. It was an eye. It bobbed there in the water, spinning slowly. My first instinct was to flush it away in horror, but it was so odd, so completely unbelievable, that I found myself fishing it out with a glass from the kitchen and setting it aside on the edge of the tub. I studied it for a moment. Its surface was clean and pearly white, aside from a thin strand of muscle tailing from the place where it would normally attach to the socket. The iris was a beautiful shade of dark brown, almost black, with flecks of amber. Its pupil was wide and empty, staring at nothing. At some point I must have hobbled to bed again, because I woke up on my mattress in the morning. What had jolted me awake was the shrill buzz of my apartment doorbell. It kept going until I dragged myself to the door. Through the peephole, I recognized the thick mustache and shiny eyes of Rick, the everything man. I undid the deadbolt and Rick let himself in. "Morning, Dan," he chirped. He was holding a tray full of styrofoam to-go boxes. He handed me one labeled with my apartment number. "Breakfast," he explained. "Courtesy of management." I thanked him. He pushed past me and began poking around at the AC unit. I figured he was just doing a routine inspection, so I let him carry on while I hung back the living room, awkwardly holding my box. I popped it open while I waited. Inside, I found a plastic fork and a large cinnamon roll topped with green sprinkles. I hadn't eaten anything yet. The almost sickly sweet smell of the frosting was intoxicating. Wordlessly, Rick surveyed the kitchen. I heard him open the fridge, which I had not yet stocked. I heard the faucet squeak on, then off again. Seemingly satisfied, he moved on to the bathroom. I heard the shower turn on and off again, then the faucet, and finally the flush of the toilet. By the time he returned, I'd eaten the entire pastry. Rick gave me a once-over like he was inspecting me too. He gave a shiny, straight-toothed grin. "You passed," he said. Something in that smile unsettled me, but I brushed it off, mostly because I simply did not understand it at the time. In retrospect, I think it was a kind of hunger. Rick left without another word. I heard him whistling down the hall, keys jingling. As I stood contemplating the interaction, my phone rang. I rushed to my desk. I work in tech support. I am rarely required in the office. Most of my work is done from my PC or over the phone. It's not exciting, but it pays well. Plus, I don't have to leave the house unless I want to. For a homebody like me, this was a perk. My client had just joined the call when I heard a scraping sound coming from the bathroom. It was only at this moment that I remembered my midnight illness. Surely what I'd seen had been a bad dream, the byproduct of a nasty bout of food poisoning. The scraping reached my ears once more. Then a crash. I politely put my client on hold and ran to the bathroom. The glass cup had slipped off of the tub and shattered. I knelt down to pick up the glass, dreading what else I'd find lying on the tiles. There it was, staring up at me from among the shards, an eyeball. The pastry churned in my stomach, threatening to come up. I gagged. That thing had come from inside of me. Was this a rare health condition? I combed my mind for any sort of explanation and came up short. Logic was running thin. The fact remained, something very foreign had taken place within my own body. The eye writhed like a tadpole. I panicked. I grabbed a dustpan and swept it and the glass into the trash without ceremony. I sat there for a few seconds, considering my options. The thought of it squirming in there, alive of its own accord, was too much to bear. I grabbed a wad of toilet paper and fished the eye out of the can. Through the thin paper, I could feel it wriggling beneath the pads of my fingers like some kind of mutated roach. I booked it to the kitchen, dropped the vile thing down the drain, and ran the garbage disposal until it had been sufficiently pulped. After that, I ran the water for another minute or two until I was satisfied that any trace of flesh had gone. I sank down against the counter. A cold film of sweat coated my forehead and neck. I didn't know what to do from there. My body felt heavy, tired beyond belief. The thought of leaving the apartment suddenly seemed as impossible as lifting a semi-truck. I canceled my work call and went back to bed. An hour later, I got another call. It was Rick. "Dan the man," he said, peppy as ever. "Come downstairs whenever you've got a minute. Management wants to see you." The office was nicer than the rest of the building. It was a pristine, freezing cold room in the basement of the complex. The walls were pale green, the floor and ceiling a minimal tiled white. It felt and smelled like a doctor's office. I sat on a hard, upholstered green chair facing an empty desk. On top of this desk rested a placard labeled "Resident Management" in embossed lettering. Beyond the desk was a wide, opaque white window. As I waited, a shadow appeared behind this window. The person's silhouette was made fuzzy by the tinted glass. A smooth feminine voice crackled down from some hidden loudspeaker in the room, speaking my unit number. "That's correct," I said. "Why did you want to see me?" "It has come to our attention that you breached our agreement today." "What do you mean?" The person behind the glass gave an impatient sigh. "When you signed with us, you agreed that no damage would come to the contents of your apartment." I was stunned. "With all due respect, I just moved in yesterday. I've barely had a chance to unpack." The speaker remained silent, so I pressed further. "What damage could I have possibly done?" "All contents must remain undisturbed," the voice said, emphasis on the all. She sounded more irritated than anything. "This especially includes organic materials. Did you gloss over that paragraph within your lease?" I'm afraid I don't know what you mean." My head spun. Though I hated the implications, they could only be referring to the thing I'd just disposed of in my kitchen sink. I heard a pen click, then the sound of scribbling on paper. Beneath the window, a slot creaked open. A rubber-gloved hand poked through, shoving a stack of papers onto the desk. "Please review the document," said the voice. "We operate on a 3-strike system here. You are on your first infraction. 2 more, and we will be left with no choice but termination. I have circled the relevant section." I opened my mouth but couldn't find the words. I just took the packet and began to read. It was my lease. Each page contained my initials in the corner, as well as that of the property manager. I located the circled paragraph. "Tenant must not destroy or otherwise inflict damage upon any and all contents of the apartment, including blinds, window panes, countertops, walls, ceilings or floors, doors, MISIC accommodations, and especially organic materials. Organic materials include, but are not limited to, body of tenant, see tissue, fluid, bone, hair, and additional bodily expulsions. Preservation of the apartment ecosystem is of paramount importance to the success of this community and its objective. Failure to comply will be addressed by management on a strike system. Upon the 3rd strike, management reserves the right to terminate the offending tenant." This section was new. It had to be. But there were my initials neatly printed in my handwriting. I flipped to the final page to find my full name printed in bold and my signature scrawled on the line below. "This can't be legal," I said. "I never agreed to this." "You said that you'd say that." Her flat, matter-of-fact tone made my blood boil. "Can you explain what the hell is going on before I get a lawyer?" I said, standing so abruptly that my chair tipped over. She laughed at this. "I'm afraid that won't be possible." A musical chime sounded over the speaker. From a white, nearly invisible door to my left emerged 2 people in pale green hazmat suits. Thick visors shielded their faces from my view as they grappled my arms with surprising strength. I struggled, screaming in protest. I felt a piercing pain in my neck, and the world was cloaked in cotton. Everything felt light. I was gliding out of the room, being lifted on some kind of dolly. I craned my head to see who was pushing me. A familiar wide grin and wiry mustache slid into view, distorted and alien. "Hey, champ," Rick said. "Let's get you back to your unit." Since that first day, I have been living in a state of total fear and isolation. I don't know what this place is, but I know that it is making me very ill. All the while, they're watching my progress from somewhere beyond these dingy walls. If I follow the rules, things are easier. I don't leave. I get my groceries delivered and take all of my appointments online. I have tried to run. Rick always finds me before I make it through those double doors and out into the sunlight. He is the sentry of this ancient building I have come to despise. He is always smiling, even as he wrestles me to the ground, even as he drags me back to my own unit door with its peeling paint and rusted metal numbers. I don't think he's even human. I've grown accustomed to the smell of the body as it falls apart. It's not just eyes now. Pieces of vertebrae and swatches of sinew clutter my fridge in pitchers and plastic containers. Strange butterfly clusters of ears cling to the lamps and windows in shuddering sheets of flesh. Strips of gums and teeth crawl like inchworms across my countertops. Furthermore, something is wrong with my skin. Every night I feel it fluttering and pulsing, as if it too wants to replicate exponentially, to multiply, to escape. I'm pretty sure I'm breaking protocol just by writing this account. If anyone finds this, know that I am alive, but I am rotting all the same. I don't know how much longer I have. Last night, an entire hand crawled from my throat. The apartment buzzer just rang. I already know who it is. Story 2. The woman with numbered teeth. My stepmother hated me, despised me. She never said it, but hate exuded from her every expression. The scowl was immediate, a juxtaposition between disgust and hate. Strangers, even those most suspect of character, evoked nothing but kindness from her. But for me, there was nothing but disdain. She hated me, and I hated her. My father had died a few years back. A sudden heart attack, a man seemingly healthy, but always a minute from death. My father drank and smoked, but was active and full of vigor. His death was both expected and unexpected. I knew his lifestyle was unhealthy and dangerous, but naively, I also believed he was genetically superior to the rest of the human race. He was destined to live well into his 90s with a shriveled liver and a stubborn determination to persist beyond the expectations of human physiology. To me, he was a superhero, flawed but celestial, a man who embodied greatness. He spoke his mind, he feared no one. He was the quintessential alpha male. Then he died while shitting on the toilet, his pants down around his ankles and his head buried in his own exposed crotch. When God humbles, he doesn't half-ass it. He doles out the humiliation in full measure. My dad loved Blue Hole Lake. He talked of it constantly. His family went there every year. His father and his father before him, every August and every summer from the first time the lake was formed until my father ended the tradition. He never took me to the lake or the cabin he so fondly remembered. After he died, I vowed to return to the lake and reinstitute the long-neglected family tradition. Why didn't he take me? Why didn't he want to do with me what his father had done with him? Honestly, it hurt me. I put together the trip, the vacation request approved, a rare concession from my boss. I planned it for August, well in keeping with family tradition. I honored every detail, every little nuanced description my dad willingly conveyed. I say willingly because there was a glaring omission in his fond recollections. He always stated that they stayed in the same cabin, but he never said what cabin it was, the number, nor any description. He would stop and stare into his own mind, steadfastly removed from the present, cast into a painful memory, his strength visibly drained. August was hot and unforgiving. The dark water splashed and rolled towards the beach. It was inviting and intimidating. I had rented a one-room musty cabin. I got there late on Monday evening. I was going to unpack and read myself to sleep. It was too late to have much time for swimming, but a force pushed me to do otherwise. There was a need, a compulsion to swim, an invitation to dive into the ambiance of nature. I changed into my swim trunks and headed down to the lake. There was about an hour or so until the beach was closed. It closed at sunset, whenever or whatever that meant. I suspected sundown was less about the sun and more about the whims of an impatient park ranger ready to end the day. I walked slowly into the water. The warmth was uncomfortable. I expected a chill, but it felt more like dirty-ass bath water, shocking and disappointing. The heat of the water was suffocating. There was an unremitting discomfort. The beach was empty and bare. I swam to the orange barrier, the line between safety and danger. Beyond the other side was an unimaginable depth, or maybe just the recognition that this was the distance of no return, no coming back from the edge of eternity. I put my arms up and rested my back against the float, looking up towards the beach. The last of the patrons was leaving, drying off and packing up his belongings. I was the only one left. At the top of the beach, I could see the parking lot, and beyond that, a patch of forest. A slender brunette in a two-piece yellow bathing suit strolled out of the forest. She carried nothing, no bag, no towel, nothing but a pompous swagger. The closer she got, the more her beauty came into focus. Everything about her was steeped in a previous era. Her bathing suit reminded me of the women I saw in black and white movies. Her hair was of an elegant movie star, short and curled in the back. She entered the water with no reservations, boldly plunging up to her chest. She slowly turned her head to acknowledge my presence and held me in her gaze. I felt exposed and pinned down, unable to cast my eyes elsewhere. She seemed significantly closer to where I was than where she had originally entered the lake. It was a transition, as if in a dream, a relocation from one point in space to another point in space, with absolutely no movement. Then she submerged under the surface and disappeared. She was under longer than any human possibly could be without suffocating. Minutes passed. Time dragged. I surveyed the lake, looking in a panoramic frenzy, feeling uncomfortably close to death. She was nowhere to be seen. I feared she had drowned, gotten wrapped up in a litter of sunken debris, or her foot caught in some unintentional trap. And then, right in front of me, she emerged from the water, her eyes pale blue, without iris or pupil, marbled with streaks of red. She smiled, and etched in black on 3 of her top incisors were the numbers 314. She held her smile in a long, bizarre pose. The water was too deep to stand, and yet she didn't attempt to tread water. She didn't thrash about. She simply floated, perfectly still, not even affected by the wake of a passing speedboat. She wasn't subject to the laws of nature. The water obeyed her. The warm water cooled rapidly. My teeth chattered uncontrollably, my trembling breath visible in the gray air. The sun was diving fast into the deep horizon. She slowly vanished, still flashing that hideous smile with that cryptic message scrawled across her teeth. Her icy hand grabbed my ankle and pulled me under. The plunge was unexpected. I was unprepared. Water rushed through my nostrils and mouth as I breathed in, foolishly trying to scream for help. I kicked and thrashed my arms upward, trying desperately to break free. I felt her release my ankle. I shot up through the depths, further down than I had anticipated. Dim light, beautiful twinkling points of grace beckoned through the water. Freedom was close at hand, but as my hand broke the surface, she grabbed my ankle and yanked me even deeper. I heard her cruel, muffled laughter. My lungs were on fire. It was as if I had swallowed hot, thick oil. Pressure coursed through my veins. I felt the pounding of my rapidly beating heart in the temples of my head. A dizzying array of stars swam before my eyes. I then see her floating before me, her skin blue and tattered, eaten and rotted by the forces of nature. Death was consuming her, and yet, though barely visible, I saw her smiling. 314 flashed across my mind. I realized I was free from her grasp. I shot up to the surface. Oxygen extinguished the fire in my lungs. I coughed and heaved up filthy, bloody water. The coughing was uncontrollably, but so was the instinct for survival. I thrashed and coughed and coughed and thrashed. My arms were rubber, hands and feet number. I barely felt the water, but as soon as my foot touched the bottom, the sensation of sand stung my feet into action. I made my way to the shore in a clumsy combination of swimming and running, a dance of hysterics, the play between weakness and a determination to survive. I was a wounded gazelle with one last chance, a dash through the thorny shrub, but to no avail. I felt the familiar grip on my ankle. She dragged me back into the water. I turned to kick, the water shallow enough to allow free movement of my limbs. The heel of my foot glimpsed the side of her bicep. The skin was loose and sloughed off her arm. Her body had deteriorated to an even worse degree. She was a walking, waterlogged corpse. One of her eyes was missing and the other was decayed and collapsed. Chunks of flesh were gone, chewed or decayed. Her hair was no longer elegant. What was left of it was thin and stringy. Through all of it, though, she never ceased to smile. 314. I was now fully on my back. I tried to kick again, but at the moment I went to thrust my foot forward, my whole body went limp. I was paralyzed. I lay in the shallow water, looking into the darkening sky. The water was lapping against my ears and splashing into my eyes. I felt her climb on top of my legs, crawling her way slowly up my body. She lifted her abominable face from my chest, grasped her bony hands around my shoulders, and heaved herself forward. Her face was in my face, her one good eye dripping down her cheek. The stench was vomit-inducing. I swallowed, choked, and gasped for air. "Charlie," she whispered. "Charlie." That was my father's name. "Charlie." "I'm not Charlie." She grabbed my head and planted her dead lips on mine. Bile and decay filled my mouth. It wasn't a loving embrace. Her mouth held tight. Putrid water flowed from her inner being into my throat. I felt like I was trapped in a dentist's chair with dirty cotton stuck in my mouth and rigid plastic stretching my lips wide. A vision played before my mind. A beautiful woman in a two-piece yellow bathing suit with elegant hair talking to a man eerily similar to my father but much younger. A child on the floor, an argument, the man choking the woman, lifeless, the man leaving with the child. Cool air rushed across my body. I heard a splash and a scream. I could feel my arms and legs again. I crawled to my knees, stood up, and was about to run when I heard her whisper from behind me, "Son." I stopped and turned. My feet were still in the water. The warmth from earlier returned. Fear subsided, but sadness engulfed me. The woman was beautiful again, but she was no longer smiling. She seemed ashamed. The last light faded and her shadow dissolved into the merging line between sky and water. I had every intention of leaving that night, but I was exhausted. Sometimes fear plays itself out. You can only be haunted by ghosts for so long before it becomes routine, part of life. Besides, something had changed. That morning I packed and got ready to leave. I had 3 days left on my reservation, but needless to say, I wasn't really in the mood to be by the lake. I did my last check of the cabin to make sure I hadn't forgotten anything. It's a ridiculous routine. I check under the bed, in the drawers, and even in the shower in case I forgot some soap or shampoo. There was an empty carton of orange juice in the refrigerator. It wasn't mine, but I didn't want the next tenant to think it was me, as if they would go through the trouble to find out which asshole had left trash in the refrigerator. As I walked out to the garbage can near the road, I noticed the cabin across the street. The little wooden sign staked out in front of the porch had etched in it the number 314. That was last August. Now a new August is fast approaching, and I've made reservations. This time I've invited my stepmother. Story 3. My wife has started to act strange. It all started with a damn single hair. My wife is on the shorter side. I can see over her head even if she stands on her toes. We were cooking when she tried to squeeze by. By chance, I looked down at the top of her head. At first, I didn't see it. It was hardly noticeable. A single short white hair was mixed inside the rest of the dark strands. I reached out to brush some hair away to get a better look. She flinched away from my hand but laughed at the movement. "You're going gray," I commented, smiling, hoping I didn't offend her. She wasn't even 30 yet, but I've seen people whose hair that turned before her. "Good. I'll look super hot." She laughed again. She let me look at the small white spot. It was short with a slight bend and thicker than a normal hair. I reached over to take it between 2 fingers, ready to pull it out. She elbowed my chest, getting away with her first gray hair intact. "Let it grow longer. I like it." I raised my hands, showing a truce. If she wanted to let it grow, I didn't care either way. It was just a hair. We got busy cooking dinner, and I forgot about it for a few days. That was until Carrie fainted at work. The call came while I was in the office. It was an hour before I got the message. I quickly told my boss I needed to leave for the day. I rushed to the hospital with dread forming in my stomach. I met her in the waiting room. She looked pale, but overall, not as bad as I feared. Her co-worker drove her there, which was nice of them. Soon, we were able to see a doctor for a checkup. They didn't see anything wrong with a basic checkup and tests. A scan had been suggested, but it would take a while before Carrie could get a more thorough look. We were sent home without any answers. I tucked her into bed to let her rest for the rest of the day. Thankfully, Carrie didn't feel lightheaded when we got back home, only overtired. I thought getting extra sleep would fix that. The next day, it appeared the rest cured whatever caused the sudden fainting spell. Carrie acted like her old self and went back to work, even though she could have taken another day off. I told her to not push herself. If she started feeling off again, she should stop working and get someone to help. She assured me she felt fine and nothing bad would happen. I believed that for a while. The medical tests wouldn't be for a few weeks. I kept an eye out for more gray hairs at the roots, however, none showed. However, I noticed something else. Carrie started to act differently. The signs were small. She would pause for an extra few seconds, trying to think of the next word she wanted to say. I figured she was just having issues sleeping. The concern came when her eating habits changed. Carrie had always been a picky eater. That was fine. We worked around that. One night I came home to see the food I had bought for myself gone. I wasn't upset, just confused. It wasn't like her to devour frozen meals, and yet she had doubled what she ate without gaining weight. Instead, it looked like she had been losing some. I brought it up to her and she just brushed it off, commenting she always ate more when the weather got colder. We had been married for 5 years. How did I never notice that before? Then her memory issues got worse. Small items like keys and her wallet were always getting misplaced. I was very understanding and helped her find what she lost every time. After we located what she had misplaced, she told me that maybe stress from work was getting to her. I believed that the first 3 times. I started to look online to see if there was anything I could find that explained these little changes. A month after it all started, she did something she never had before. She snapped at me. We were in the kitchen dishing out a special takeout meal when I caressed the top of her head. I leaned down to kiss the top of hers when she spun around, face red with rage. She pushed as hard as she could with both hands, knocking me hard into the table. It didn't hurt that much. I was more shocked than anything. "Don't fucking touch me without any warning," she shouted and stomped a foot. My mouth hung open. Carrie never swore. Well, rarely. She would drop a curse whenever it was funny. but I had never heard her swear in rage at anyone, let alone imagine she would do so at me. "Sweetheart, are you all right?" I asked, mouth open. What had I done wrong? Did I cause this? Or did something else happen that made her act this way? My head swam with thousands of questions. Carrie quickly settled down, embarrassed by the outburst. She walked over and offered an apology hug that I took. "I'm fine. I don't know, I'm sorry. I just don't feel like myself for some reason," she said in a small voice. I risked a heavy question that changed the mood. "Do you think you might be pregnant? We've been trying for a while and hormones can make you act different," I suggested. She scrunched up her face at the suggestion as a joke. "Different? As in crazy?" She half-joked. "Well," I trailed off, and my answer made her smile again. Sadly, she pulled away and shook her head. "No, I've already checked." I didn't let the disappointment show on my face. We hadn't had the money for the tests to see why we hadn't been able to have a child yet. We figured one would come at the right time. That time simply hadn't come yet. "We'll call the doctors to see if you can get in for those scans sooner. You might have hit your head harder than we thought when you fainted at work. It's not as if you made changes to your medications or anything like that," I suggested. There hadn't been a bruise when she fainted, but I didn't want to take the risk. An odd expression came over her face as she chewed on the inside of her lip. Carrie had something she wanted to tell me but was too embarrassed to do so. It took a few minutes and some joking threats of eating her dinner for her to open up. I took some of these Asian pills I bought from the gas station. They're supposed to help with a lot of things, like those weird energy drinks you can find. I frowned, concerned over this new information. "Do you have the box still? We can look up to see if anyone else has had the same issues." She shook her head and sighed. It was like 2 months ago, if not longer. I took 3 and then tossed them out because they made me feel lightheaded. I don't know what they were called, and the gas station stopped selling them. Well, that sucked. She didn't remember enough to track down these mystery pills. At least we had something to bring up when we saw the doctors next. Or so I assumed. I held her tight, assuring her everything was all right. Figuring out why she felt so odd lately wouldn't be a big deal, that it would just take time. I was unaware time is what we lacked. A few days later, Carrie skipped work and stayed in bed. I offered to stay home, but she talked me into going to work. However, I left my shift early to find her in the same spot I had left her. Dark bags were under her eyes even though she rested all day. I got her dinner and begged Carrie to go to the hospital. Somehow, she talked me down and promised to go in the morning if she still felt tired. The meal woke her up a little. I climbed into bed next to her and we watched a bit of TV before both falling asleep. That night, I woke up in the dark to hear her moving in her sleep. I turned on the bedside light and she flinched away from it. Her hands went over her eyes as if the brightness hurt. "Do you have a headache? Can I get you something?" I offered. "Migraine." "Yes, please, it feels like pressure." Her voice was low and weak. I got up and put my cell phone in my pajama pants pocket. Depending on the next few minutes, I would call for an ambulance. I got her a glass of water and some aspirin I helped her take. Her body felt far too thin. How had she lost so much weight without anyone noticing? While keeping her upright with a hand on her back, I spotted that single white hair growing out of the top of her head. I had forgotten about it. An urge to pluck it came over me. While Carrie remained defenseless, I took the hair between a finger and my thumb, then pulled. Her body jolted. Instead of normal hair, it appeared like I had started to pull out a thread that started to get thicker. Her scalp bulged a little from what was under the skin, making my stomach churn. Unable to help myself, I kept pulling. Slowly but surely, the long white thread came out, growing thick and thicker as more came into view. Her body twitched and her eyes rolled back. I knew this was hurting her, and yet I couldn't stop. Wrapping the exposed thread around my hand a few times, I took a good hold of it with the other and pulled as hard as I could. White liquid pooled out from around the wound. I heard a soft pop as the end of the white, wriggling mass came loose. It moved on its own, the end as thick as my finger. I could have sworn I heard it scream in the dim light of the room. Carrie had stopped moving, her body limp, but somehow a dazed smile was on her face. "Oh, that's better." Her words were slurred and her eyes slowly started to shut. Disgusted by what I saw, I tossed the thing away as quickly as I was able. My hands flew to her shoulders, trying to shake her awake. I didn't understand what happened or what I just did. The wriggling, long, white creature I just pulled from her head started to inch closer to my bare feet. I nearly threw up, my skin crawling at the sight. I might have been able to handle myself if what happened stopped there. Quickly, my deepest fears came to light as more small white hairs pushed through Carrie's dark strands, moving on their own, looking for a new host. Just one of these things was enough to nearly make me lose it. Seeing so many caused my brain to shut down. I hate myself for what I did next. I turned on my heels, fleeing the house, leaving my wife behind. I know I called 911, but had no memory of what I said. Police and an ambulance showed up. A lot of questions I did not have answers for were asked. I sat in the back of a police car, letting people speak to me, but not hearing a word. At some point, another car pulled up. A black one with a very plainly dressed man got out. He took some officers aside and spoke with them. Had someone called a lawyer for me? Did I need one? I didn't care enough to ask. The officers came back and asked if I could speak with them at the station. I numbly agreed, but asked about Carrie. They said nothing and just ushered me away. I spent the night at the station going over what I had seen in detail with someone who didn't bother to write anything down. In the morning, I was free to go, but not a soul had told me about Carrie. When I asked, the officer gave a strained look and asked who that might be. I felt like I was going crazy. I demanded information about my wife and caused so much trouble they almost locked me up. A bomb was dropped on my world. They claimed I was never married, and I arrived that night because of a random arson attack on my home. These officers were bad actors. I knew they were lying, but they refused to drop the new story. I called in a favor and a co-worker drove me to my place. The street was swarmed with firefighters finishing putting out a blaze. I stared in sheer shock, realizing they kept me at the station all night so they could cover all this up. Who was they? I don't have the slightest clue. No matter who I spoke to, those people had reached them first. In stressed tones, they claimed to not know who Carrie was. This couldn't be happening. I didn't understand how things went wrong so fast. I called and called, praying someone. Anyone picked up the phone that knew her. Soon, my calls and any attempts at contacting her family were blocked except by one person. Her mother answered the phone. At first, she didn't speak, and I didn't think anyone was on the other end of the line. Was someone else there with her? Or did she just not want to speak with me? "Please stop trying to contact us. We don't know who you're talking about," she said in a low, strained voice. "I still have photos of her on my phone, photos of us together. Please tell me what's going on." I begged. She was also a victim here. I didn't want to get angry at her. I just wanted answers. "That's... AI is getting good nowadays," she said, but didn't sound sure of her statement. "Please, I loved her as much as you did." At first, I thought the line went dead. After a full minute, she responded, whispering so low I barely heard her. "I did love her so much. But I need to think of my family. I lost a daughter. I refuse to let them take anyone else." She swiftly hung up the phone and then blocked my number. I knew I would never hear from her again, no matter how hard I tried. If I did press the matter, I endangered everyone Carrier ever cared about. Right now, I'm staying in a hotel using the last of my savings. My family has offered to take me in, to get help, to try and live a normal life. I considered taking them up on the offer. The only thing stopping me is a constant itch at the top of my head, growing more intense by the hour.